Hi and welcome. I can see we have quite a few people who are already joining us. Every week you see me on Houston Chronicle Live and you don't hear me talk for more than a few minutes, but this time I'm actually part of the program along with my lovely colleagues here. Let's just go ahead and do a quick round of intros. Kelly Scott, you have seen her before on here. We actually kicked off this whole series with Kelly, who is our executive editor. Yafa Frederick, who you've also seen before. The very next one we had was a Q&A with Mayor Whitmire just 1 month into his mayorship, and Yafa was there to moderate that. But then we also have two newcomers, Alejandro Matos and Fernando Alfonso, our two managing editors. And yeah, we're just excited to meet y'all. So why don't you guys come on in? The water's just fine. And if you can drop in the chat where you are joining us from, what neighborhood, if you're coming in from downtown Houston, you're at work, you're tuning in from Memorial, Pearland, Cypress. All right. Kingwood, someone from Westview, Bel Air, Katie. Nice. What? Someone is from Memorial, but sitting in England at the moment.
Wow.
Incredible. All right. Galleria, downtown, Sharpstown. That's great. Okay, and it looks like we're about 2 minutes past the hour, so let's go ahead and get going. So I'm going to go ahead and just ask everyone to do a quick introduction. Their name, what they do in this newsroom, what their function is, and your go-to coffee order in the morning. Kelly, you want to start us off?
Sure. So hi, folks. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Kelly Scott, and I am the editor-in-chief here at the Houston Chronicle. I've been here since, what is it? Last October is when I started here. I came here from Alabama. I was in Birmingham, Alabama, where I oversaw AL.com before that. And I worked for Gannett for about 20 years in other places across the country. So I'm glad to be here and thrilled to be in the newsroom and a Houstonian now. My go-to coffee order is black coffee straight. That's it.
And that's true. I've seen like Kelly bring in an Nalgene bottle of just straight black coffee, and she'd like those throughout the day. And
there you go.
Now, so great. Fernando, why don't you go ahead?
Sure. Yes. I'm Fernando Alfonso. So I'm the new managing editor for news and content development. This is my second go around with the Houston Chronicle. I last worked for the organization about 6 years ago. I come most recently from NPR, and I was based in Atlanta, Georgia. I've been in the industry for over 15 years now. Lived and worked in states like obviously Georgia, Kentucky, and New York, where I'm originally from. So it's just such a great, it's just really great to be back in Houston and back with this organization.
That's great. All right, Alejandro, you want to take it next?
Hi, I'm Alejandro Matos. Very excited to be here. Also managing editor. I oversee our audience team and content strategy. I manage teams like our Austin politics team, our bureau based in Austin, our weather team, our data team, and life and culture. I have been here since about December, but like Fernando was once a reporter here in the organization. I covered politics from Austin back in 2017, and have worked in places like Minnesota, the Star Tribune, Washington Post, and Wirecutter, the New York Times. I am a native El Pasoan, native Texan from El Paso, and have lived in Austin and now Houston. So been all around Texas, but it's great to be here.
That's great. All right, Yafa.
Hi, I'm Yafa Frederick. I'm the Senior Director of Investigations and Impact Reporting. This is my second role at the Chronicle. I actually started last September covering local government during the mayoral election, which was a lot of fun. I've covered a lot of politics prior to that. I was at CNN for 7 years in different political roles and moved around the country and around the world in the course of that. But investigations are near and dear to my heart. And at the Chronicle, I'm overseeing our local and state teams, as well as the storytelling team we'll be developing. And I'm really excited to tell stories in digitally innovative ways that kind of reach new audiences beyond our typical print audiences that we've targeted in the past. Oh, and cappuccino.
I was gonna say, I think we all forgot our coffee orders, or I
I
did.
see someone in the chat said no one wanted to follow after my black coffee stand. So bring it, folks.
I probably have the most like annoying, like what do I get these days? I get an oat milk latte with hazelnut is what I do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
That
and
sounds awesome.
I'm not the biggest coffee guy. I think I'm mostly like hot chocolate, I
Who are
guess.
you? Hot chocolate? How old are you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Did not see that coming. Okay,
No,
I
I
didn't
was
know
gonna say I was
that.
tea guy maybe, but chocolate, hot chocolate. Wow.
All right. Well, that's a good noted. That's good to know for the future to get Fernando some hot chocolate whenever we get. All right. So I guess I'll go ahead.
That, just to be clear, apparently we didn't talk about your favorite coffee order when we went through and we got to know each other. So
I
there's
know
that.
that. I think that tells you anyways. I think that's, but you've had 2 young children. So this is my lifeline. Is that why? Okay. So, I'll last but not least, so I'm familiar to so many of you just for, being a face on in these events. My name is Jennifer Chang, native Houstonian, born and raised here, graduated from Clear Lake High School, go Falcons. I went to the University of Texas. So I've been, deep Houston, Texas roots. My parents still live in Clear Lake. And I'm really just proud to work here because this is the paper I read growing up as a kid. And so, right now my title is Senior Director of Experimentation and Innovation. And all that means is that I get to really, try some cool new things. One of which is this initiative to try to connect directly with you, the reader, the subscriber. And this, this forum is one of the ways we're trying to do that right now. So yeah, excited to be here today with my colleagues. So I think as if you don't already know, if you have any questions, comments, anything at all, please drop them in the chat, in the Q&A feature. We check both. I just have to, in your defense, Fernando, someone said, after a steady diet of Hallmark Christmas movies, I thought everyone drank hot chocolate. That's fair. Hot
Right.
chocolate's delicious.
Very
so,
wholesome.
Yeah.
Especially around
So-
the holidays.
Yeah,
right.
Yes.
exactly. It's right now it's a little hot for that, but that's okay. So to kick things off, I thought it'd be really useful to kind of go through. Here's just some things that we've been doing lately as a newsroom, and I'm going to share my screen so everyone can see it. And I hope this works. Let's see. Let's go into slideshow mode. Okay. Share my screen. There it is. Okay. All right. So here are just a few things of what we're up to. And I thought it would just be helpful for you as a subscriber. Our journalism is only possible with your support. So here's just some things that we've been doing lately. Fernando or Alejandra, do you guys want to take this slide?
I'm happy to chime in and pass to Alejandra, but obviously I actually started at this organization, here in Houston, at least a week before Hurricane Beryl. So it's very front and center in my life. But our newsroom did just some really remarkable work that I'm sure all of you in this call saw, everything from our live updates in our blog to track the drips and drabs of updates, whether it's from our public officials to our readers in terms of what they were facing. The social channels, we really were dogged about keeping those updated for our readers, particularly those who may be out of power, who had limited access to cell service and so forth. So it's just really important for us to do that. We had a really, really great strategy around call outs, really trying to interact with our readers on a daily basis on how they are doing, how they are faring, how they are coping with the fallout from Beryl. And we really wanted anyone here who participated in any of those call outs, responding to those surveys, a big thank you from me, because I think that these kinds of things really help keep it very real and front and center for us, these types of storms, and how we do our reporting. Our newsletters were just crucial in the coverage, and again, providing our readers those updates that were necessary, and our accountability reporting. You all saw our work around Centerpoint and how they responded to this storm. That work is ongoing, and we understand how important that is moving forward. Alejandra?
I think you covered a ton of it, but I do think we're curious, what it is that we're missing, especially now that the storm's kind of past us. Like, tell us, what are you still interested in? What questions do you have? I do think the storm kind of took everyone by surprise a little, in terms of just the impact it had on a Cat 1, right? And then obviously the question is if a bigger storm were to hit, and inevitably probably will hit Houston, what's next? So we would love to see any questions that you still have lingering, and just give us your feedback on that coverage.
Yeah.
I'm
Great.
going to chime in on a couple things too that we talked about here. I mean, I want to brag for a second on some of the things. We had a team that went to the coast at landfall, and we sent them out there before anybody else did, and so we could track kind of what was happening as the storm rolled in. They could track it in live time for us too, which was pretty amazing. They did so through some satellite phones, et cetera, because things in power went down. A big chunk of our newsroom and our news organization here too was without power. We printed our newspapers in Baton Rouge for that week. And so it was kind of a wild time of how we did that. We had really early deadlines if you're a print newspaper reader, to push us in that direction because we had to truck things back and forth with the power outages and the storm. So there were a lot of things that came into play with this as well. The center point piece, we asked a lot of questions around that, to try and figure out how we might help the community understand what happened and how we can go deeper. And that's the office team who did a lot of that work. Much credit to her as we moved into that direction. And now we're continuing forward with it. So more to do, but I just wanted to kind of share a little bit about the experience here on this end in the room, because we had so many people in the room without power, and the newspaper was without power, and the printing issues made it for a real interesting week at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, and kind of shifting gears a little bit, this is an exciting new, initiative that Alejandra, why don't you go ahead and tell our subs about this?
Yeah, so we launched this in early June. I hope you all have started to see this either in your inbox or on our site and other newsletters, but we launched Houston Explained. It is our new content vertical. It's our new project by Andrew Dansby. Andrew has been at the Houston Chronicle for more than 20 years. And he has at times offered to do a walking tour for people when they're new to the city. And he just has the most fascinating stories. And so we were like, what if we took Andrew and helped have him explain our city in a different way, right? We want to work up to the walking tours, but in a newsletter, explaining just like the what makes Houston unique. So these go out two times a week today, on Tuesdays and Fridays. And we explore the everyday curiosities. So most recently, he did Why is Houston so hot? Which airport is better or worse? And then also looking at the people, places, and culture that make Houston unique. So this Houston Key Map is one that's just like, it's something super unique to Houston, everything you needed to know about it. Today's version is going to be all about the Astrodome. Sorry, Astro World, not Astrodome. And why it shut down, what it is. So that comes out later this afternoon. If you're not already signed up, HoustonChronicle.com/explained. You can see all the editions we've had so far. And you can sign up for the newsletter in there. But we are super excited, and I'm sure that Andrew will be in one of these events pretty soon here.
Yes, absolutely. I look forward to this every week when it comes out, and please chime in if you feel the same way, or if you'd like to see Andrew in a future event. All right, and this is also another exciting and fairly recent thing that we've been doing. Fernando or Kelly, I don't know who.
Go ahead, Kelly.
Well, I'll just start this a little bit. Is that one of the holes in our coverage that we've seen is that folks in Houston and Texas are really into college football, whether it's A&M, University or Houston or University of Texas. This is a thing, and this year Texas, as we all know, went into the SEC, which is also a thing. And so Kirk Bowles has been a columnist covering Texas football for more than 50 years, and he is considered pretty much the authoritative voice on all things Longhorns. And so we have hired him to come join us and join our voices we have on AM as well, to really get the Texas view of being on the SEC, being in the SEC. If you are a college sports person who's followed around, the SEC has a lot of thoughts on Texas being in the SEC. We're going to represent the Texas thoughts on being on the SEC. So a lot more to come. We're really I see a note in here about a lot of Oklahoma States and Oklahoma fans. I went to college at Nebraska, so that's like one of the best rivalries in college sports for many, many years. So I'll just leave that sit there. Anyway, we're excited to have him, and we're excited to bring that perspective so that we can really own what that looks like going forward. Fernando, you want to talk more too?
No, I mean, you really covered it, Kelly. I mean, and it's really exciting, and it's something that we have seen our audience, you all have really been responding so well to this coverage prior to bringing Kirk in. So, yeah, please, again, in the same vein as our Hurricane Burrow coverage, be reaching out to us on, topics around SEC and football season that you would like to see more of, because it's important for us to be, responsive to those kinds of things. But that's it.
And I think Kirk is kicking off a newsletter as we get close to the season starting, football season starting. That's what I'm talking about. And I believe he'll do one of these events as well. So Kirk has,
Yes.
I mean, it is amazing to listen to him talk about what being in the SEC means for Texas at this point. So we've got that. Is he someone who says, please don't overlook UH? You got it. We've got a reporter there as well. So those are our big three when it comes to the college sports.
Absolutely. Big fan of Kirk, was reading him before he came here, just because if you're a Texas alum, you know Kirk Bowles. So really excited to have him here. I'm going to stop sharing for a second. So I love seeing all the comments. Please keep them coming. So, one thing I would just wanted to kind of open up really quickly is, we're about to move into audience questions in a little bit, but Kelly, is there, you came on this program, if we can call it this program, in January, and you were kind of looking ahead on like what your vision was for the newsroom and what's to come. And I'm just curious, just while we're all gathered here, like, your leadership team is in place now. What's to kind of come in the next 6 months? And is there something you can kind of share as far as that goes?
Yeah, well, I will talk about a couple of things here. I'm really excited about this new leadership team we have in place. Everybody on this team has ties to Texas, ties to Houston, and we're moving in a direction to really understand what can we do for people here in Houston, and how do we cover Texas in a way that's for Texas by Texas. I think that's really important. There's a lot of places around the country who jump in and tell stories about Houston, about the places and the things we do here. Our goal is to reflect the place that we live in through the stories, the people, the policies, all the things that we look at. And I think that that's the most important part, is we want to make sure we have a sense of place in our reporting. One thing that we've started, and Jennifer is the champion of this in our room, is something we're calling the Houston People Project. One of the goals I have for the newsroom in this year ahead yet is to get out and talk to 1,000 people throughout the whole metro area about what they love about this place, what they hate about this place, how they ended up in Houston, what's their Houston story, what issues do they care the most about. And we want to root ourselves in what people in our community, in our metro area, are interested in and what they care about, not just what journalists in the newsroom think is the most important things. And I think that's the next real big switch that we have to make in our mind, is how do we make sure that the stories and the work we do reflects the issues and the things that you all care the most about. So that's what's ahead.
That's great. All right, so let's go ahead, and we're at 11:20 now, so I want to give enough. We're seeing a lot of questions come in. We also had some come in from email, so I want to get a chance to answer them. But really quickly, someone kind of dropped in. I think some of us did not get a chance to answer. Someone asked, Yafa, where are you from? And also someone wanted to know my coffee order, which is I like lattes, so I guess that's there. But Yafa, why don't you go ahead and kind of share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'm a Yankee. I'm also from New York, which is why I say coffee, not coffee. I don't think that'll change no matter how many years I'm here, but I've been in Houston now for 3 years, and actually moved here initially because of a job my husband got and ended up working remotely for CNN. But it has definitely become my new home. And as much as affordable housing is an issue here, I can tell you, coming from New York City, that when I left my 600 square foot apartment and moved to Houston, I embraced a whole new world of space that I am never going to go back on.
Love that. All right. This question is from Michael. How has artificial intelligence, AI, been incorporated into your articles? And I think this is kind of interesting because at Hearst, which is, you know, our central company, we have been kind of experimenting it with guardrails with ethics in place. So, you know, can kind of speak to that a little bit. We have, you know, the people working on AI in our newsroom and at Hearst are journalists first and foremost. Nothing is published without a human being involved in it. We do not have articles that are automatically published without a human intervention, a human editor, human, you know, writing the prompt. This is every step of the way that we have been producing articles still has a human attached to it. The way that we have been kind of experimenting with AI, and we have actually a disclaimer that is on our website. You can read it yourself, and I can, if you're interested, you can email me. I'm happy to send it over, and it appears as a disclaimer on our website that there may be the use of AI in things like optimizing for search engine optimization. There may be the use of AI and kind of looking at links and articles, but we do not have AI writing articles completely on their own. That's not quite the function of what we do. Alejandra, I know you've been kind of working a little bit with the AI front. Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, it's mostly that. It's mostly to help our reporters, and especially our audience producers who have to, you know, write very engaging headlines for social, and also different types of headlines for search, right? When you Google questions, we want to make sure those are formatted in such a way that Google will read those and put that information in front of you. So we do use AI to kind of help start the brainstorming process around those headlines, but nothing ever gets published without a human looking at it and hitting the button.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, here's another question. Let's see. So I think this is a little bit off our coverage of Hurricane Beryl. Any idea how Centerpoint sets their priorities? There were so many stoplights on flashing red for over a week, and I actually still see some on my drive-in or some. So Yafa, I know you and your team have your Centerpoint. So yeah.
Yeah, no, Centerpoint became the story, right? Because when you don't have power, a lot of these other issues don't take the same sort of precedence. This is part of what we're digging into right now, and we're not the only ones. The state and the Public Utilities Commission that has the power to regulate Centerpoint are asking these tough questions. I'm not sure they have given a good answer to how they set priorities. One of the things, though, that our investigative team is doing is going through their budgets and going through their balance sheets. What are their operating expenses? What are their capital? What are they making money on? Because one of the things about Centerpoint is they are guaranteed to make money. They have a monopoly over Houston. So how are they spending that money is really the key of what are their priorities. Are they doing the maintenance, particularly on trees, that's necessary? We'll have a story on that coming very shortly of how they've been budgeting that. But they're also going to be appearing before the state ledge over the next few weeks, in addition to the Public Utilities Commission. And my hope is also that some of the leaders start to ask some of these questions while we're doing the sort of investigative deep dives into their budgets and into the filings that they have to file with the Public Utilities Commission.
That's great. So a lot more to come from Yafa and her team on Centerpoint. Obviously not a story that's going away anytime soon. So we do have a question, and I see it appearing on the Q&A feature. And also we had various people write in via email, and they're all kind of circling around the same sort of topic, but I'm going to read the one in the Q&A. Does the Chronicle have any politically right of center reporters? What is it doing to assure proud George H.W. Bush conservatives that bias will not creep into your reporting? And we did have some people write in emails, and I want to call out one particular gentleman who wrote a bunch of emails that were not as nicely phrased as those questions, and then at the end said, thanks in advance for not bringing this up in the Zoom. So I want to still address that person, and of course the lady who wrote in, you are our readers, and you know, and we want to address this. So Kelly, I know we had kind of talked about this a little bit, and yeah.
Yeah, you know, I'll start with that question. I think it's a really important question. you know, bias has been an issue, I think, in media for as long as media has been around. And it's something that, you know, I worked in Alabama for about almost 6 years, and I take that point. Bias can mean a lot of different things. I think we often think about it as being a political bias, but I think there's a sense of place bias. There's conversations about who is from a place and understands it and who doesn't. One of the things that we seek to do in this newsroom is to center ourselves in place and understand how issues resonate in place. And I think that's really important because I often see bias creep through when people are writing about something that they're not centered in the same way. And so that's one thing to think through. We don't have reporters who are Republicans or Democrats or, you know, liberal or conservative, whatever. That's not how we go after things. We go after things about issues, policy, and my preference is to focus on issues and policy, and then politics as they play a role. You know, I did a lot of work over the years. I was in Nevada for a long time when Nevada became a consequential state in the American presidential race and so forth. And this whole conversation about how we go about that, I think if you root the work that we do in place, people, and policy, and then evaluate politics through this lens, it's a different conversation than when you start with politics and work backward. And so that is what I seek to do as we do this. Now, the editorial pages are separate from what we do in the newsroom. They do analysis and they're all about opinions, where we're about facts and policy. And then, like I said, those kinds of developments. We just had 2 reporters who were at the RNC. Jeremy Wallace is invited to as many places with Republicans as he is with Democrats in this whole state. And I think that's worth noting. In fact, I have to leave you all just a little bit early because we're going to a meeting with the Dan Patrick about some of our reporting to talk through. I think that is the place where we can work on to earn people's trust. I say this, you know, as a place of, look, my parents are, you know, in their late 70s, and I'm from a house divided, whereas one person is a hardcore Republican and the other person is a hardcore Democrat. And I could literally talk to you about both sides of the issue. And it's so funny. If I want opinions, I'll call both my parents separately because they won't talk about it in the room together anymore. And I think that more people sit in the middle of these issues than probably partisan TV tends to think they do. And if we can really figure out how to double down on that, I think that's the important part to help people feel seen and feel like their opinions are reflected in our work. So that is what I'd say on that. And that might sound a little, I don't know, theoretical for all this, because it's hard to do at the end of the day, but our work starts with people. That is 100% where our work needs to begin, is with people. And we need to work backward from that. So that is what I would, you know, that's how I approach this. I hope y'all help us hold ourselves accountable, and tell us about what you see and what you think about in the words. I see, you know, in the chat here, somebody says our reporting still leans left and focus on the headlines. I would love to talk to you more about that and understand where you're coming from. I think that's the piece, is that we have to be willing on our end to hear all of our folks who live in our community, understand what the issues are and how they resonate in Texas, and figure out how do we do better all the time. It's important that you see your thoughts and your opinions reflected in our work and people, you know, because journalism always starts with people.
Absolutely. Kelly, I know we have to lose you soon, but that's just, you know, the day in the life of Kelly and Scott. So
But
we'll see you
I
later.
literally, I do have to leave, but my email address is, we'll put it out there. Please email me. I would love to talk to any of you about any of the questions and things that you have. I really appreciate it.
Yes. So I'm going to go ahead and add Kelly's email to the post-event survey. If you can take a few minutes just to look at that survey. We'll have links to the sign up for the newsletters we talked about. We'll have Kelly's email in there, which I guess you are welcome to email her about now. One more, kind of piggybacking a little bit off of that, Kelly spoke about the importance of facts and reporting on facts. And I know I'm seeing several questions in here about how we go You know, and I know a lot of people, I get this question myself when I meet people and they learn what I do. It's like, what is the process? Like, how do you even go about it? What's the workflow look like? So, you know, I don't know, Fernando, do you want to take a stab at that? Or Yafa, I know you have a very rigorous fact checking in your operation too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to go first. I think the reporting process, I mean, the sausage making that goes into it, it's obviously very complicated, especially in the world that we live in with the internet and everything like that. And I think we take fact checking very seriously and reporting process very seriously. And sometimes I think what seems to sometimes be lost, I think sometimes to the general public, is that it sometimes takes time. Not all the facts come together all at once. It sometimes, and you know, and believe it or not, when we are told something by credible sources, sometimes it's not the case, and we have to go back and re-verify and look at our work and the reporting. So I will tell you, in every newsroom that I've worked for, fact checking and such has always been at the core of reporting. And again, in the world we live in with so much information flying all over the place, it's really unique challenges. As easy it is to fact check things online, it's also very easy to be misled by things online. So old school reporting tactics, picking up a phone, going and seeing something in person, it's just incredibly valuable. And we saw that play out in a very big way with Beryl, obviously. But Yafa?
Yeah, I mean, I think in investigations, I take a very, very critical lens to this because, of course, in journalism, your credibility is in the factual storytelling that you do. And to some of the points being made in the comments, you can't necessarily trust what comes out of a politician's mouth. You can't necessarily trust, even if they have the best of intentions. And so we rely a lot on primary source documents. I mean, a lot of our investigations, we're diving deep. So I'll give you a practical example with Centerpoint. Centerpoint will say to us, you know, we're doing tree maintenance as an example. Okay, how much did you budget for it? How many crews did you send out? What's the filing that you had to file with the Public Utilities Commission to confirm the accuracy of that? And does that jive with the public statements you're now making now that you're getting blowback? So we go to these primary source documents. Now, not everyone is working or in a partnership or directly for the government. So there's not always an abundance of filings, but we do rely a lot on those public filings and court filings. We put in a lot of record requests. And we really try to poke holes. I think one of the things I love about investigative journalism is taking an idea, a hypothesis we have about a story and poking every possible hole into it. This is what they're telling us. This is the 15 reasons this probably doesn't make any sense. What are those 15? What are the facts we have to support that? What are the facts we have that don't support that? So we go through this exercise of poking holes. We also, particularly in investigations, we work hand in hand with our legal team. I mean, our legal team is very sensitive to this, right? We don't, in addition to our credibility, we don't want to defame someone accidentally. We don't want to ruin anyone's career. And so we work hand in hand with legal. Now, they're not fact checkers, but they often act as sort of a backup fact checking system to the internal ones that we've created. And I think that that's really important as well. And to one other point, you know, there are a lot of unreliable sources of information. Fernando just said, right? Like the internet is a wonderful, but also deep and dark place, and you can't trust everything that's on it. And so there is that element of boots on the ground, going to see things with our own two eyes, really pulling up those budgets, or sometimes going to see something and there's nothing there, and that's part of the story. Money has been spent on something and it ain't there. So we do a lot of the on-the-ground reporting, the sort of internal interrogations, working hand in hand with our legal team to ask the questions that we may not have even thought of yet in arguments, and sharing it with other folks in the newsroom. I do this a lot with people who are not on the investigation team. I tell them the story and I ask them to poke holes into it as well, because sometimes you just need fresh eyes, and we get really deep in our stories sometimes. So we need someone to pull us, you know, out of the hole we're in to really interrogate the facts.
And
Really
I see your suggestion here, Lorraine, in the chat around an article on public and unreliable sources of information. I mean, undoubtedly, all of us in this chat have had those kinds of conversations before. I know that was a conversation I was engaged in 6 years ago when I was with the Houston Chronicle. So I think it's a really interesting suggestion, and one certainly we can and should talk about as a leadership team.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually kind of, Yafa, I'm glad you went into detail about like, what do we do when someone says something and you're looking into it and it's like, that's not true, or there's something there's another level to, and so I just kind of want to call that out specifically because I see people dropping in the chat, how do you, like, you can't just merely repeat what people say, like we have, and I want to assure the people who have dropped that in, like, yes, like that is absolutely part of our reporting is fact
Yeah.
what is said to
I
us.
mean, I will say the one thing I say to my reporters a lot is everyone has an agenda, right? Everyone who wants to talk to us has an agenda. Sometimes it's a pure agenda. Often it's not. Now, it doesn't mean what they're telling us isn't true, but it does mean we have to interrogate both the source and the information itself every single time.
That's great. All right, I'm going to switch gears a little bit. Someone wrote in the Q&A, I enjoy your restaurant recommendations. How do you decide which restaurant to review? And Alejandra, I think, Alejandra leads the team right now, including the food team. So why don't you go ahead?
It really is up to them. I mean, they are, Bao and Allison Cook, they are really plugged into, what's new, what are people wanting to read about. So it's really up to them. And they have if you all aren't aware, a pretty rigorous process for reviewing. They go, I believe, 3 times at least to each place, and order multiple things, make sure it's the right. People aren't having an off day. So yeah, we actually are about to publish a collection of all our food guides. I realized the other day, they're kind of hard to find all in one place. So we're going to publish that later this week. So I'm very excited to push that out.
That's awesome. Right in time for restaurant weeks too, to have that all handy. Great. Here's another question from the Q&A feature. What is your commitment to health and medical science reporting, and what does that look like post-COVID? Fernando, I don't know if you or Yafa, actually, I know you've been working on this team pretty closely.
Yeah, Yafa, do you want to tackle it first?
Sure, I'll tackle it from an accountability perspective. I think one of the things when I first got to Houston that I was really amazed at was the size of the Texas Medical Center, being the largest in the country and actually arguably in the world, and how many different hospital networks existed within it. That, some for profit, some nonprofit. There are a lot of public hospitals as well. And one of the things we're really focusing on is accountability work in that. Do we really put Texas Children's, Houston Methodist, Baylor, St. Joseph's under the microscope? Do we talk to the people who work for the hospital? Do we talk to the people who get care? Do we look at Medicare complaints or, accusations of fraud? Really starting to examine it, because one of the big selling points I think on Houston that I heard when I moved here was we have the best medical care in the country. The top doctors were the top of the rankings. Well, one of the things we're also starting to do is question, how are those rankings designed? What is weighted in those rankings? Do they deserve the rankings? Are we truly the best? So that's a big thing. And we're going to have a member of our team as we grow who's specifically devoted to medical and healthcare accountability work, really honing in on a variety of elements within the Texas Medical Center. But I think part of this also does stem from the COVID era and being caught flat-footed. I mean, the story I will tell about CNN is that we actually laid off most of the health reporters right before COVID, and we ended up having to hire a whole bunch of medical students to help us get through the pandemic. So there is that recognition that there's, always another one beyond, but we really do want to look at the resources that go into the medical center, the funding they get both private and public, and how they are doing. How do you feel they are doing in terms of serving your medical needs?
Mm-hmm. And then I think on the flip side, the complement to the great work Yafa and her team are going to be doing and are doing is, kind of that human element side, the medical care workers, right? The nurses, the physicians, the support staff, those unsung heroes, like trying to figure out and learn more about their plight and what has been going on with them. We know that, nationwide nursing and nurses have become, and that they're in short order, that traveling nurses has become a very big industry in these hospital systems. There's a lot of turnover, what is happening in the nursing ranks, and understanding that more is just an example of something that, you know, I really want our organization to be looking into, because we, you know, in Houston, there are tens of thousands of nurses. So that is, again, a compliment to Yafa and what the work they're doing.
That's fantastic. All right, here's another question. Someone who joined us a little late and wanted to ask ISD and the superintendent and the money. So I imagine that this person is asking specifically about the charter schools that Mike Miles was involved with before coming to HISD. But Alejandra or Fernando, I know we've covered this before. If you want to speak to our education coverage and how we plan to go about that.
Yeah, I could go quickly, and then Alejandra, please correct me or add. Like I've met with our education team last week, I believe, and I can tell you wholeheartedly that there is plans in place for our HISD coverage, that we understand how this massive school district is having a moment, and that the audience and that you all are eagerly awaiting almost everything we write and cover about HISD. So I can leave you with a broad sense of we are completely aware of what is happening with HISD, very plugged into what is happening there, and have a plan, a robust coverage plan for the start of the year and through the next couple of months and beyond. But Alejandra?
Yeah, I mean, I think you know, we've had quite a lot of reporting resources, adding resources on HISD. I mean, you know, the state taking over that district is a big deal. I mean, I like I said, I grew up in El Paso. My district got taken over, but there was all kinds of fraud and all. I mean, it was probably a good thing that it got taken over by the state. But just once that happens, it's a long road. I think EPISD and El Paso Independent School District was in that takeover for I mean, almost a decade. So this is a long road ahead, and I know the team is interested in this too. Like, obviously a lot of interest in Mike Miles and what he does, but how's this impacting teachers, right? And ultimately teaching and learning, right? Students, and you know, are outcomes better for students? What outcomes, right? Like, a lot of parents and students like value access to extracurricular activities. Like, it's not all about the test scores, and you know, what are students' needs being met sort of holistically. So I think that's a big question, and really ensuring that we're to what we've been talking about here, like rooting our coverage to and centering people and the people most affected by these changes. So definitely something we will keep looking into in the school year ahead.
That's great. And the person who submitted the question says that they're happy to be interviewed on and off the record. So that's great. If you can take the post-event survey, we have a spot in there for you to share your email, and we'd be happy to reach out. All right, kind of moving on a little bit. This is really, I think, such a great question for us. I think when we talk about like why we go into journalism, someone asked, do you have accountability teams for city and county government? Yes, we do. And Yama, do you want to talk more about that?
I know. I feel like I intersect with both of them. So I actually started as the local government editor, and we had created a position right around the time I started, actually called like power reporting, where we were going to hold both city and county officials to account. Dylan McGinnis has been in that role for several months now and has started to do some of that work. As the investigations team, the local investigations team, is being built out over the next few months, that is a key part of it. There is a local government person that is built into that, because that is a key part of where our money goes. And we have lots of critical questions about it. We also have both city and county operating with deficits in the very near future. And so that raises really big questions about where the money is being spent, and is it being spent to serve us as citizens and as constituents or not? So we will have one full-time person doing this local government investigative work. Dylan has been doing a lot of this now. He will continue to build that out. But yeah, accountability work is core, particularly to what my team is doing, but it is built in across these teams. We have to ask the tough questions of if these industries leaders are serving us or not, and if not, what are the accountability mechanisms built into it?
That's great. I don't know, Fernando, you want to add anything to that?
No, I mean, again, accountability is really crucial for this organization and crucial for I think all news organizations that find themselves in a place where we compete with a lot of, a lot of other options for people out there, whether that's other news organizations, but other sources of information from social media and so forth. So I think that the value that organizations can continue to add for a society and with that accountability piece is crucial. So it is something certainly as I settle in here that is going to be really front and center in a lot of the discussions I have with the different teams that I manage, of which, and I should have mentioned this on the onset, is Metro, sports, business, education. So to give you all a glimpse of that.
That's great. All right, this question is from the Q&A. What is the team doing to facilitate reporting those stories that the community wants to hear about? Reaching out in some way, and if so, how? And I think this is a really great question, and Alejandra leads our audience teams, which kind of, their objective is reaching out to audience and connecting with audiences. So, Alejandra.
Yeah, I mean, I think, as Kelly mentioned at the onset, like our people project is going to be a big thing too, to just understand what a wide swath of our citizens or residents want to read about, know about, what they care about. It's not necessarily the questions aren't really being framed around what do you read? Like, it's not for us. It's really to truly understand what makes people tick in the city, what they love about it, what they hate about it. And so that's going to be important. The other thing, as Fernando talked about in our barrel coverage, is how do we find ways to tap into our community through social call outs, surveys on the site, right? We publish some of these, tell us, or even as minute as like, what's your favorite restaurant? Like, yes, our critics have their favorite restaurants, but how do we get our readers, our audience more centered in our coverage? So we do have a big commitment to do more of those in the year ahead. And then honestly, like all our emails are pretty much public on our website. Like we just email us. We'd love to hear from you. We can't always respond, but I do know we read them all, and we try to respond as quickly and often as possible. So, but yeah, we do have, like we did with Barrel, we do want to incorporate a lot of our readers in our coverage. And even Houston Explained. I mean, one big thing about Houston Explained, I know it's one particular project, but every article has a box in there that it's like, what's your Houston question? Tell us what your Houston question is. We incorporate those in each upcoming edition, and some of them will hold to answer it more fully. And Andrew is reading all of those. So as we sort of launch more of these projects, figuring out how we center our audience in all of them.
That's great.
And sorry, Jennifer. I mean, and to give you a glimpse too, I mean, the Houston Explained, the one that Alejandra mentioned, the one on the key maps is a great example of some of the work that goes on behind the scenes to kind of discover ideas, to discover what the Houston community is sharing, discussing online, right? So that was an idea that I personally found on Reddit, on our Houston. Some folks in this chat may be aware of that community. But it's a place, again, where people can share links, share insights, ask questions. And someone had brought up an older key map book that was decades old. And I found it got such great responses, such positive interactions with people saying how they remembered it and how it was such a big part of their childhood. So we took it upon ourselves, or I took it upon myself, to reach out to the owner of the company, who was a longtime worker turned owner. And you kind of see it come to fruition that way in a really nice, beautiful package on Houston Explained, where, again, it took something out in the zeitgeist, out in, on the internet, and boiled it down to something real for our readers and touched on something that I think people were really passionate about. So again, it gives you just a glimpse of just how the reporting process sometimes operates and how we harness those, communities online.
Yeah, that's great. I just wanted to chime in and say too that if, you've heard us talk about the Houston People Project, and, if you actually want to be interviewed for this project, we would love to hear from you. In the post-event survey, there is a question. I believe it's just, what are the untold stories we should look into? Please provide your email address. Go ahead. If you would like to be interviewed for this, I'd love to hear from you. So go ahead and drop your email address in that part of the post-event survey. All right, so here's another question, and we have time for maybe just one or two more questions. So please get them in the chat if you'd like it to be addressed. Any investigation into the appraisal review board? I imagine this is property taxes. I bought a new townhouse last August and got an appraisal for much higher. It was reduced, but it was still much higher than what I see the houses around me are selling for. So anyways, I guess, I know for sure we are not done with the idea of what is it like to be a homeowner in Houston and property taxes. But Yafa, why don't you go ahead and take
Yeah, I love that question because the answer is yes. We are actually working on a multi-part investigative piece that we are aiming for later this fall and into early next year, partially timed with the ledge coming back into session. This is when a lot of these property tax laws, so we wound up with an HCAD appraisal board where we have to vote for 3 members, come into being. So we are very much trying to time it because we want to be sure that we hit lawmakers at the point that they are devising some of these bills. But we're also going to be doing a little bit beforehand too, that is directly in service to you, really asking the question of, is the system fair? Is it fair on the same street? Is it fair across different neighborhoods? There are also some algorithmic elements to it that go into account. So we actually have an IT member who has been working on this for a very long time. So I am pleased to say we are going to answer that question and many more around the whole appraisal process.
That's fantastic. All right. And then, several people actually brought this up, I think because we talked about Dansby, who has just done some really wonderful features and arts coverage, is, curious about how we want to approach art coverage since, I think right now we've been mostly focusing on the really big players, but, how can we kind of cover the smaller art galleries, the smaller groups?
I don't want to put this all on Dansby because life and culture is not just Dansby in our newsroom, but I will say his vast knowledge of Houston and the art scene and sort of again these like hidden gems is the reason that we thought Houston Explained would be the best. He'd be the best for that vertical, and I think that is part of what he's going to be doing in Houston Explained, is shining a light on the hidden people, places, culture that people need to know about in Houston, like what makes Houston Houston. And yes, it's the big players to your point, but there's so many small galleries, theaters like that he really is plugged in with and can shine a light on. And again, like we have other life and culture reporters as well, and that's what makes Houston so great. I mean, obviously the food scene, but we do have a wonderful museums here, theater and art scene. So definitely something that we're committed to continuing to cover.
Yeah.
What's a vertical? I see that question. Sorry.
Yeah.
That's very, what's the word I'm looking for? It's something, it's a vertical is, gosh, now you're putting me on the spot. Well, okay, there's a newsletter, it's content on our site, it's an Instagram account, it's a line of coverage. So again, the Houston Explained is a vertical. It's also probably kind of old school. It's sometimes they used to be sections in newspapers, but now we think of them in the digital space.
I was going to call that out. Sometimes we get so caught up in our own world and we use our own language. And yeah, thank you for asking that. The reader who dropped in the chat. So and actually someone also said with the gray tsunami coming, maybe coverage of local nursing homes and affordable housing programs for the elderly. I love that idea. That's fantastic. And we have time for maybe one more question. I think this is a good one because we've heard this in various ways throughout this call is, how are you making sure you're keeping news reporting separate from editorials, the factual, neutral news reporting separate from editorial? And I think this is something so many people have asked before, and many people don't, just in the same way we use the word vertical, we assume that everyone knows this and not everyone does, is that they're at the Houston Chronicle and our newsroom, our news division, so our newsroom under Kelly Ann Scott, is actually completely separate from our opinion department. So our editorial board, our opinion department that puts out endorsements, that puts together, our op-eds. That is led by Lisa Falkenberg, who I think many of you also are familiar with. She reports up to the publisher, not up to Kelly. So, and they actually, if you visit us, if you've ever visited us here, we actually sit on completely different floors. There is a physical separation to just really drive home the message that we are two different groups, two different entities within our organization. And we take that pretty seriously, that separation. Sometimes maybe a little too, like sometimes something, I actually remember this quite clearly in that the opinion, this is a few years ago in 2020, they endorsed Amy Klobuchar, and we had no idea that endorsement was coming. Sunday morning, we were like, oh, okay, and it's, and that's just how separate we are and how separate the process is that we don't even know what the endorsements are many of the times. So, I just, I think that's a really great question because there are a lot of questions about it. And I know, I think we take it for granted. Sometimes people just, aren't aware of how our newsroom is set up. I have really enjoyed myself. Thank you everyone for taking the time to join us. We're almost at the end of our time. We really try to make an effort to read everything. We didn't have enough time to get to every question, but please, if you can take that post-event survey, if you have any other questions, please drop them in there. We want to hear from you. We want to talk to you if you want to talk to us. So please fill that out. Yafa, Alejandra, Fernando, thanks so much for joining us. And yeah. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.